So, this is an audience request and one I wanted to do too. We're talking about the basics of payroll. Sometimes HR has a role in this and get it wrong. And if we do, it's quite possible we'll get fired. So, listen up to this critical discussion. And this is the HR Hub. Keep listening to learn about this topic and all kinds of things related to HR. You can also find me on YouTube. So today my guest is again Stephen Van Alstine. Stephen's the Vice President of Professional Standards and Education for the National Payroll Institute. He's worked in payroll for a long time and recently presented at the National Payroll Conference. He's working on a project to evolve the standards within the payroll profession. Hi, Stephen. How are you?
I'm great, Andrea. Pleasure to be with you.
Pleasure to be with you too. These discussions are fun. We're going to teach HR about payroll. We're going to try and do that.
Yes. Yeah.
So can you please tell us what payroll does in 2 to 3 minutes? And I guess in plain language, but I think you speak pretty plainly already.
I think where I want to start, Andrea, is to talk about the fact that we just completed a payroll competency framework for the profession. And we're very excited about that. And again, this is a wheel. You can go on our website, payroll.ca, to see it. But it really kind of hits on what is involved with the delivery of payroll. So it's really a wheel that talks about 4 components. One is the delivery of payroll, the actual paying of employees, that practice of making sure they're getting paid accurately and on time. The other is ensuring compliance, because as we've identified, payroll is very legislatively and regulatorily driven. So making sure that the compliance is being met, because there's big risk in terms of not being compliant.
Can I pause there?
Yeah.
What kind of risk? What's going to happen if, say, I don't know, you don't put tax through on something?
Right. So there's penalties, obviously, because they did not meet their timely requirement, or they didn't meet it on an accurate basis. So then an organization is responsible for that under remittance, as well as being penalized on that amount that was under remitted. If you're not compliant with employment legislation, let's say you're not paying overtime to employees that are working overtime, the organization can get, again, serious fines for that, on top of having to make sure they're retroactively addressing any of that non-compliance to those employees that have been impacted.
I think a lot of employers who are like, oh, I want to cut corners, they're like, oh, I'm hoping that they can get away with it.
Yeah.
Can they get away with it?
They could certainly get away with it. But at some point, when you think about it, it's like our taxes. We can certainly say fudge the numbers with our taxes, but that can catch up with you through audit or through mechanisms that the government has to be able to determine that, okay, we've received forms and slips. The employee's not been putting that in accurately, and similarly, the government can do that with employers as well.
Yeah.
So there are mechanisms in which it can be determined, but sometimes just a random audit can also identify those issues. So it's a risk that an organization can run. Some organizations are willing to take that risk, others may not be. So, and this is, I think, why payroll can be so fussy about making sure that everything is accurate and everything is timely.
Anyways, go on. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
What payroll does.
And then the partnership strategically with business. So again, we consider 2 major players within the organization an important strategic partnership, and that is HR and finance, and then other stakeholders, whether those be benefits providers or pension providers or things of that nature. And then at the core of it is that embodiment of a service mindset, right? Making sure that we understand our customers are our employees, and we have to have that service mindset. If we didn't, it would impact the employee engagement experience, and that can, again, erode trust. It can be problematic for the organization, and I know that HR is very well aware of the stakes that are high with regard to that. But
Hmm.
payroll is about really making sure people get paid correctly and on time, every pay. It
Hmm.
includes calculating wages, overtime, vacation pay, the
Hmm.
statutory withholdings that include tax, CPP, and employment insurance, and deductions like pension, and if there are benefits deductions that are an obligation of the employee, because sometimes those are. Payroll also ensures all of that is done in compliance with employment laws, union agreements, tax legislation. But behind the scenes, payroll is gathering information, hours worked, new hires, changes to pay or status, and turning that into that accurate payroll information that gets transmitted to government. It
Hmm.
also files requirements with government, issues the tax forms, the
Hmm.
records of employment, and keeps detailed records that stand up to audit. So I want to put something into context for you, Andrea, because I think people are really surprised by this figure. Payroll professionals in Canada are responsible for paying employees $1.4 trillion on an annual basis. They're responsible for remitting $470 billion to the government. Probably about 60% of all of the revenue that flows into the federal government comes through payroll remittance.
When you put it that way, that really is a lot of money.
Yeah.
When payroll and HR are separate, uh, what is the typical role that HR needs to play so that payroll can do their jobs and get it done right?
HR does provide the inputs payroll depends on. So
What are
that,
those?
that
Yeah.
includes employee data like job titles, start dates, compensation, benefits eligibility, and contractual terms. HR also informs payroll of life changes like promotions, terminations, leaves, address changes sometimes.
Hmm.
If HR doesn't provide this information accurately or on a timely basis, then payroll obviously cannot do its job, right? And that means people may get paid incorrectly, which hurts morale and can even put organizations at legal risk, as we've talked about.
Hmm.
But it also means more time spent correcting mistakes than improving systems and building that employee engagement, that positive employee engagement.
Hmm. Okay, so let's talk about new hires because I think this is this is where it starts.
Yes, absolutely.
Specifically, if I were to create a checklist of the
Yep.
things that HR needs to provide to payroll when hiring a new employee, what should go on that list?
So you need to tell us what the person's full legal name is. And we're in a day and age where, we've got a lot of multicultural employees with a lot of conventions with their names. So obviously the accuracy of the name, the legal full legal name of the individual is
Okay.
critical. The birth date, because birth
Mhm.
date drives certain pieces of it. It's not just so that we can, because HR might say, "Oh, well, we want to wish our staff happy birthday," right? And
Yes.
I'm just, again,
Which
I'm coming to
which they
that.
do
They
sometimes.
do. I'm coming at it from that, perspective of the warm and fuzzy piece that HR is sometimes known for. But birth date for a payroll professional is okay, we need to know when the individual turns 18 because that's a trigger for when CPP deductions start. Social insurance number, because that is a necessary piece of information for the reporting of those government forms like T4s, ROEs. Start date,
Mhm.
the compensation. Is this an hourly paid employee? Is this a salary paid employee? Work location, because sometimes, again, there's reports that are driven out of work location, like cross referencing overtime trends and things of that nature, which
Right.
can be driven by work location. Job title and department,
Mhm.
benefit enrollment information,
Mhm.
and banking information, but only if HR collects it. Sometimes payroll collects that,
Mhm.
but sometimes HR may be responsible for it. But what we're finding more and more as we see technology advancing through HCMs, again, human capital management systems or HRIS systems, is that there's a lot of self service where
Yeah.
employees can go in and put some of this information in. But obviously the system, this is where, again, the communication between payroll and HR is critical, because it's like, well, what information do we need to have the employee putting in if they're doing that themselves?
Uh,
So you talked about the changes.
oh, yes, yes, sorry, I was
Yeah.
getting it, and I wanna talk about, offboarding, but okay, so changes. I think maybe, like, for the various changes, it's gonna be quite different. Like, a mat leave's different
Yes.
than a promotion is different than, I don't know, like, going on, bereavement leave.
Right. Right. Yeah, so there's the leave component, the leaves of absence. What are the
Okay,
different types of
yeah.
leaves of absences? And frankly, like when you look at maternity, for example, some organizations will provide top-ups, maternity leave top-ups,
Yes, they will, yeah.
right? So you get EI benefits from the government, but the organization is going to top you up to 85% of your income. Again, organizations have different types of top-up programs, but mat leave and parental leaves, adoption leaves, those are the more, probably the more critical ones. Like you mentioned, bereavement. Somebody could go on a 3-day bereavement leave, but that's not going to have as big an impact as somebody going on a mat leave. But
Yeah.
it's remarkable. Like I go down and speak in the United States a lot about Canadian payroll. They are completely mesmerized by the number and volume of leaves that we have, including statutory, public, and general holidays, which there's all kinds of legislation around that. Uh,
They have public and statutory holidays
they
in this.
do, but not to the same extent that we do.
Okay, alright.
Yeah, and the mat leave just completely blows
Yes.
their mind.
Well,
That,
yes, yes, I mean,
but
yes.
yeah. And then there's other things from a change perspective, like pay raises or job changes, status changes, like somebody moving from a part-time role to a full-time role. And
Mm,
I'll tell you why that's important, because in some organizations, when somebody moves from the part-time to the full-time, they all of a sudden might be entitled to benefits. Like they might be entitled to sick leave,
yes.
or so there's a change. There can be a change if the organization participates in an EI premium reduction program.
Yeah.
Then it's important, because the people might be on two different RP. RP accounts are what the accounts are that are with the Canada Revenue Agency. And then, of course, there's just simple changes to benefits, deductions, or taxation forms. Like if somebody, we don't have to have people completing the TD1 form, which
Mhm.
dictates your tax levels every year, unless there is a change to their circumstance. So all of that speaks to the when too. Ideally before the pay period closes, and definitely before the payroll processing deadline, right? Because you don't want to have to be dealing with, like, if somebody's salary changed and it's effective on a particular date and you don't hit the deadline, the payroll processing deadline, and it has to be done in the
On the
following or
next one,
subsequent pay, then you're calculating retroactive pays. And that can have a whole process associated with it.
you were talking about dates. There's payroll date, there's the payroll processing deadline.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, because oftentimes, so let's just use a week as an example. Let's say it's a weekly payroll and people are getting paid on Friday. Payroll will commonly have to transmit the payroll late on a Tuesday or early on a Wednesday in order for the pays to be transacted by Friday, because it has to be transmitted commonly to your payroll service provider. It has to be processed. It has to be validated, and then it has to be funded. The organization then has to fund that payroll to the provider so that it can go into people's bank accounts. So there's a whole series of events that lead
Mm,
up to. It's not just simply, okay, pay
you know,
everybody.
us HR people are like, "Why isn't it as easy as, like, I'm gonna buy a bike from you, or I'm gonna buy a canoe?" Maybe you're into canoeing, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyways, I'm gonna buy this thing from you, and I'm just gonna, like, e-transfer you,
E-transfer,
and
boom.
it arrive in your account 30 minutes later.
Yes. Yeah.
That does not happen in payroll.
No, no.
Hmm. I think people in HR actually, if they have no payroll exposure, actually assume that it could happen that fast, and it doesn't make sense to them that it can't.
No, no. Now we can always, let's say let's say payroll has been processed and there's no opportunity to do something. Well, you can always you can always do a manual run, right? And
Right.
I don't say that simply.
Yeah.
It can be done, but payroll does not. Trust me, payroll does not like doing manual
No. Okay.
runs.
Why not? Why not? I'm assuming it's not because you're lazy.
No, no, it's because
Because
then you
that
have to make sure then that the manual run gets updated into the year-to-date totals, gets updated, that the remittances, like that all doesn't necessarily happen
right.
organically.
There's a lot of HR people out there probably assuming that, their payroll people are so committed to their process,
Right,
kind of
right.
like as we
Or
referred
we're being unreasonable or inflexible. Like if,
inflexible. That's the
let's
word.
say you came to me and said, "Oh, Stephen, I know that the payroll is already processed, but we need to get this bonus paid to this individual." And you wonder why I'm saying, "Well, it's going to have to wait till the next
Pay
pay
period.
run." Sometimes that is done because we want to make sure that deadlines are followed, right? Because if I was all of a sudden saying, Andrea, no problem, I'll do a manual, no problem. You're going to think, well, the next time, well, this is no problem. It wasn't a
Yeah, yeah,
problem the
yeah.
last time. It's not going to be a problem. So part of it is trying to train people as well a
Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah,
bit,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and pride with like, there are benchmarks and there is data that says what percentage of the payroll was run with manual checks. So sometimes organizations are trying to set KPIs and benchmarks to say we will have no more than a 2% manual check proportion to our regular pay run.
Tell me more about that KPI. Why is that a good KPI? Because if that number creeps up, why is that a problem?
Then that means that there are inefficiencies there's a problem somewhere along the pipeline.
Okay, if your fairy princess came down and landed on your shoulder and could wave a magic wand and HR would all be doing exactly what you needed them to do.
Yeah.
What are the two things, or maybe three, because you usually have three wishes to your fairy
Yeah,
princess
yeah.
or whatever.
I have two. I
Okay,
have
two.
two.
What are your two
One
wishes?
is send information early, but most importantly, completely. So maybe that's two.
No, we'll go
Early,
with
we'll go with one. Early, get the information early and complete
okay.
because accurate, timely data is the foundation of payroll accuracy, right?
Yes.
I've been harping on that a little bit.
Yes. Yes.
If
Well,
if
yeah.
it's incomplete or if it's rushed, then mistakes happen, right?
Hmm.
And the other one, and we talked about this in our previous episode as well, but we've talked about it here too. Treat payroll as a strategic partner, not just a processor. So payroll can help HR with workforce planning, with cost control, with compliance, with ensuring a good employee experience, but only if they're included in the conversation.
I also think that that payroll could do that almost spontaneously and say, "This is what we found in the
Yes.
data,
Yeah.
and this
I
is what
agree with you, Andrea.
this is what we recommend," and bring that to finance and HR.
Yeah. Yeah, when we talk about artificial intelligence and how it's going to impact you know, the world, but specifically the payroll function, um, it is going to move us further away from the transactional kind of processor role. So it is going to push us into data analytics, key performance indicators. I think HR would be absolutely open to that.
I'm gonna I'm gonna throw out the word best practice here. And we talked about this a bit in the last one, but let's go there again because I think it's
Yeah,
important.
yeah,
If we're gonna think about best practice, what does the relationship between HR and payroll look like? If
yeah.
we're thinking that this is the best way to do it.
I think it's really built on some of those things that we've been talking about, the mutual respect,
Hmm.
the proactive communication, We talked
Mm-hmm.
about those opportunities for those syncs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those
Yep.
simple
Yes.
10, 15-minute syncs as one tactical methodology of doing that, and shared accountability, really. So HR and payroll work together, try not to have those silos, but be working together and plan jointly for major events like bonus payouts, like year end, like system changes, because more and more as the HCM and HRIS systems are more integrated, they are shared systems. So
Mm-hmm.
system changes need to be, a shared responsibility because there's a shared impact there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then there's a culture of no surprises, right? And when issues come up, they're solved, they're solved together. The biggest frustration we have with something like a termination is the surprise. We're being presented with, we're terminating somebody and here it is. And it's like, well, you haven't thought about this. You haven't thought, like, you've not paid the right amount of lieu. You didn't realize that there was outstanding vacation paid out. Like, there's a whole bunch of factors, and those are surprises to us. So there shouldn't be surprise. We always say there should never be surprises, right?
Where can someone find you in the Institute?
So as I've said before, our URL is one of the easiest on the planet. It is payroll.ca. And that's where we can be found, the National Payroll Institute. We've got great resources. Some are public facing resources. Some of obviously are for our members only, but we
Yeah.
certainly love to add members to our roll. So we've got some great resources, like we've got compliance advisors who can answer some more detailed compliance related questions for our members. So, and then we've got our designation programs and our professional development programs. We've got a great program called Learning Payroll 1 and Learning Payroll 2 that really is good for people who may not be
Uh,
doing payroll, but may want a little more insight to the mechanics behind it. So,
yes.
yeah, we would love to share our abundance of payroll knowledge with the HR community at payroll.ca.
Well, thanks, Stephen. I enjoyed that a lot. Some of that for me was reminders, but good reminders. And those two courses you mentioned at the very end there, I think those are excellent resources for HR that may need to work closely with payroll but may or may not be doing it themselves. However, we've reached the end of this episode. Thanks for listening out there. We'll catch you next time when I talk with another amazing guest.